Madam Speaker, it has been over 3 years since the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. 3 years since 13 members of our armed services fell on account of the Biden-Harris administration's rushed operation to fill a campaign promise. 3 years, not one single acknowledgement by the president, by the Democratic nominee for president, the current vice president, or anyone in the administration for that matter, to acknowledge what happened in August 2021.
This is not about honoring our fallen soldiers. This is about politics at its worst. At its worst. This bill didn't even go through regular order. It was introduced 5 days ago and didn't go through committee. Republicans were so anxious to get this resolution to the floor before the election that they didn't even get members' input. Was it written by the Trump campaign? I mean, give me a break. This is not the way we honor our fallen soldiers. We don't play politics with tragedies. And let me just state for the record, thanks to President Biden and Vice President Harris, for the first time in decades, the United States is not at war anywhere in this world. Since day one of this Congress, the Republican majority has been a complete and total disaster. Failed speakerships, failed rules votes, failed bills, failure to address real problems, failure to pass real solutions, failure to even send bills to the Senate. And today is more of the same. More failure from this dysfunctional Republican majority. Speaker Johnson promised he'd get all 12 appropriation bills across the finish line before August. They couldn't even pass half of them. He tried to coax the MAGA extremists into voting for a continuing resolution by tacking on more election fraud conspiracies. That plan went down in flames. So here we are, a week before the government shuts down, and Republicans had to move on to a new plan. And despite the Rules Committee taking testimony from appropriators last night on the continuing resolution, there is no CR in this rule. I checked, I double-checked, I made sure nothing stuck to the pages, I looked under the table. What was the point of that exercise last night in the Rules Committee, other than to once again demonstrate that this Republican majority cannot fulfill its most basic function, keeping the government open without help from Democrats? Let's be clear, their majority is not a working majority. They don't have the votes without Democrats. So my friends are putting up a continuing resolution on suspension, and once again they're asking Democrats to bail them out. Madam Speaker, when will the other side stop letting the MAGA extremists run this place? Look at the bills that are coming to the floor today. More MAGA messaging measures that will never, ever become law. It's pathetic. A bill that claims to be tough on China. Well, let me tell you, there are very few people who are as tough a critic as I am when it comes to China's human rights record. I think I'm one of a handful, only a handful, of legislators in this body and the other body who has actually been sanctioned by China. I'm not even allowed in the country, nor is my family. So believe me when I say this is a stupid way to handle a complicated geopolitical challenge. We need to be smart on China. We need to pass bills that actually get results, not just pass bills that sound tough on paper, which is all this bill is. Then we have another no-good bill that Republicans claim will tackle crime. But we all know what this is really about. This bill's only purpose is to attack Vice President Harris. The former president keeps spinning the narrative on the campaign trail that crime is at an all-time high. He has trouble with facts. Madam Speaker, I request unanimous consent to insert into the record an article by the Associated Press entitled "Murder and Other Violent Crimes Dropped Across the United States Last Year, FBI Data Shows."
Without objection.
Okay, the data shows, this report was released yesterday, by the way, yesterday, and the data shows that violent crime has dropped in recent years. But Republicans are ignoring these facts and choosing to push messaging bills like this one instead. It really is quite sad that that's kind of the state of affairs on the Republican side. And look, I get it. I get it. My friends, my Republican friends are afraid because Vice President Harris was a prosecutor who put felons in jail. And, well, I'll just let everyone who's watching fill in the rest. Then we have an absurd non-binding resolution that politicizes the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. Playing politics with this, it's disgusting. Finally, we have the Fix Our Forests Act. In my opinion, this is a pro-polluter bill that ignores the realities of climate change when it comes to wildfires. I'll be opposing this bill because the so-called Fix Our Forest Act will not fix our forests. Instead, I think it would bypass critical environmental laws, cut out scientific input, and undermine our nation's core environmental laws. Madam Speaker, look, here's the reality. Republicans have fumbled left and right over the last 2 years. They really have become the party of broken promises, wasting everybody's time and wasting taxpayer money on absurd messaging bills that are going nowhere. While we have real challenges in this country, this is the junk they bring to the floor. People want us to work together to get things done, and instead this majority spends their time fighting amongst themselves and accomplishing absolutely nothing for the American people. And it's simple, really. The other side wants to come down here and talk about anything other than their plans for the future, because when they do that, people see how weird they are. They don't want to talk about Project 2025, their dystopian plan to take total control of our country, dismantle our system of checks and balances, and take away people's freedoms. They don't want to talk about how their draconian abortion bans are killing women and putting them at extreme risk. They don't want to talk about how 9 years after starting to run for president, Donald Trump still doesn't have an actual plan to provide better health care for the American people. They don't want to talk about how Donald Trump's big economic plan would result in average families spending an extra $4,000 per year. $4,000 more per year that families would pay if his plans were enacted. So they come down here and they bring up some absurd messaging bills to avoid talking about how weird and unpopular their agenda is. And with that, Madam Speaker, I reserve my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.